thousands of unique and impressive Roblox projects out there that each stand out more than others. However, I wanted more than that. I wanted to do something that has never been done before in the history of Roblox, even if it meant almost giving up numerous times, because I never fucking give up when I know that it's possible, since I've always wanted to create something greater than most others have done, a creation beyond what the Roblox studio can even handle properly, a creation that people could just look at and say, what the fuck, because that is what makes me feel proud of how far you can really get with passion in a community like that of Roblox Obbies, even if it requires months or years to be spent on a video game. And so with all of that said, this is the Citadel of really abhorrent, never demanded, over-exceeded manifestation, and everything had started back in late of 2024. Every single Roblox builder has at one point started a project based on random 3 AM motivation, just to abandon it after making like zero proper gameplay whatsoever. And the very beginning of the Citadel being created as of early 2025 was no different. I mean, hell, I surely never expected it to eventually become one of the literal longest obbies to ever be made on Roblox, as it is over 5 entire hours long and stands at the Unreal difficulty, which is the hardest humanly possible Roblox difficulty for obbies. But anyways, once I had first started building anything for this project, I had only built some random slop gameplay within like an hour, and then completely abandoned it for a few months. Oh, and back then I was never even planning for this to end up being a Citadel in the first place, as I originally wanted for this to be an extremely long Unreal consistency based tower, which stands for towers that get the difficulty from length rather than hard raw difficulty gameplay. And so with all of that said, whilst I don't usually pick up abandoned projects again for a second time anymore, a few months later as of August in 2025, I had continued expanding on this project for fun and building more gameplay once again, with the help of Forsaken 2008 XS on the side. Oh, and it's also worth mentioning that the progression route of the Citadel was intended to be a lot different back then, as you would have originally had to repeat random EToH towers like the Tower of Augmented Misery as just one casual part of the tower's main gameplay, before this became a Citadel. So yeah, this was legit meant to be an extremely stupid, long endurance based tower with no real quality standard to it. Oh, and the original name was also supposed to be the Tower of Photo Annihilation before this became a Citadel, which I low-key still fuck with that name, but anyways. The way I went about this entire project before it became a serious passion project was to just keep spamming random gameplay I had previously created and not used for anything serious, along with creating some more random consistency based gameplay with no real standard set in place for myself, and within just 1 month of working on this like that, quite a lot of things had changed. And yes, this is when it had also become a Citadel, because why the hell not? I mean, it was always supposed to be extremely long after all, so yeah. Which, to not yap further, eventually led to this turning into what it currently is as of today after months of being in development. Or well, technically years if you think about it, since it gets much crazier later on. But we'll get into that later, as we shall start from the very beginning, which is floor 1 of course. Funnily enough, this Citadel doesn't even begin with a first floor, but rather a minor introduction outside section, which I have recently created as of me making this script. And this beginning of the Citadel is extremely simple to complete for most Roblox obbyists with a little practice, as I purposefully thought it would be a good idea to make the Citadel start off quite easy, with this outside section lasting about 1 or 2 minutes in length. So now moving on to floor 1, you'd probably think that the green floor is actually the very first floor of the entire Citadel because it's at the bottom, right? Well, no. Whilst that used to be the case, this Citadel's progression is extremely wacky and each floor has way too much lore behind it to fully include into this video. But all you gotta know is that floor 1 is actually the purple floor over here. So yeah, isn't that so crazy? But anyways, most of this floor's gameplay was originally made by Forsaken on a previous project of his that he had made, which ended up being used in CoRANDOM instead, as it low-key turned out to be a really good first floor with some balancing and decoration, along with its interesting atmosphere and song choice. But despite that though, Field 1 is once again just an utterly easy field, so it's not really that long or anything. Unlike Field 2, which is what the Citadel starts to show off more of its difficulty and interesting role. Since first of all, Field 2 begins with a stupidly hard outside section as a skill test for whether or not you're even able to all-jump or stand a chance against the Citadel. However, this is still nothing in difficulty compared to stuff like Field 8. But it's not a foreshadow that hell of a Field 2 early on, because moving on, we've now got the inside of Field 2 as well, which used to be the very start of the Citadel in early development, and whilst this might just look like a well-designed early field, that's not a big roadblock or anything, what if I told you that this Citadel actually hides some very interesting puzzles behind its name? But hey, what exactly do I mean by that? Well, you see, let's say you're absolutely cracked at Roblox Obbies, and you managed to officially get to the end of CoRANDOM fully legitimately, but you've not done any puzzle correctly that's hidden across the Citadel, because if that's the case, then you literally cannot beat the Citadel, as you will just fail to answer the puzzles at the very end of the Citadel, which I will not be reviewing. And yes, you cannot use practice mode to find out what the correct answers are either, which also applies to our jumping mode, as that also simply just lets you beat the Citadel in our jump mode without ever being sent to the actual puzzles you would have to answer correctly. So yeah, unless somebody has already beaten the Citadel and revealed the answers, nobody except me knows the answer to these puzzles, because I thought this would be quite the silly way to make this only possible towards myself for a little while without making it a private verification, funnily enough. And if you can't tell what that means, it of course means I'm gonna be trying to verify the Citadel myself, which will be live streamed soon enough. But anyways, with all of that said, Field 2 is where you have to start taking a look at things a little closer if you want to have a chance at legitimately solving these set puzzles, to say the least. But moving on to Field 3, this is where the Citadel's name begins to really make sense, as the further you progress through this entire Citadel, the more weird and extremely fucking long it becomes. For example, Field 3 begins with this entire underside to it, which has warlocks to start off, followed by an entire ultra buffed Tower of 2 skill revamp with memory gameplay that looks like this, so have fun memorizing where to go, which is also followed by a purposefully over-decorated section taken straight from the Tower of Eternal Void, and redecorated as my way of making fun of how dog shit the original Tower of Eternal Void is, as you can probably tell from the text here, followed by yet again more of this underside section, which if you were to fall on by this point, you would have to redo the entirety of the ultra buff Tower 2 skill section again, not to also mention the over-decorated blue Tower of Eternal Void section, which is then also followed by yet again an atmospheric safety netted section, with some insta-kills at the end that's terrifying difficulty to complete by itself. And for reference as to what that means, just this one single safety netted inside section of the floor would be the equivalent to completing something like the Tower of Impossible movement and difficulty, which absolutely no average Roblox player can complete. Oh, and yeah, whilst that entire floor is one of the longest floors by itself, it's not even close to just how outright bizarre the Citadel gets later on. I mean, hell, the entire Citadel has like 25 floors and we're just on the third one. So, yeah, yuppie, isn't that so amazing? But anyways, moving on to Field 4, this field is quite a lot more chill compared to Field 3, and it's also almost entirely safety netted with minimal insta-kill punishment. However, I thought it would be silly to just add a server-sided button to troll anybody who might be on a legitimate attempt at this floor, but it's no biggie because this section is safety netted, which means if you fall here, you will just get teleported back to the start of the floor without losing your progress. And aside from the inside section of Field 4, the only other significant part worth mentioning here is the safety netted gameplay under the floor, which is made by Forsaken once again, as this is quite an interesting outside section for real, but anyways. Whilst most of the Citadel isn't that punishing, considering it would be humanly impossible to get consistent enough to complete this if you were to remove all the safety nets, some floors like the inside and underside of Field 5 are almost all entirely unsafe, which means that if you fall here, you are absolutely cooked and have to restart your entire attempt all over again, because hell yeah, that's so funny and silly, of course it is. Although on the top of Field 5, after you do the unsafe parts, you do get a break section with hard raw difficulty gameplay that's safety netted and very atmospheric and chill above this floor. However, the punishment doesn't stop there. And I literally don't know why the f I'm doing this to myself, because I'm the one who will have to go for verifying this entire monstrosity after all. But anyways, it's all worth it for YouTube and for the community, am I right, chat? So please f***ing subscribe and like man, surely a world record breaking 1.5 hour long mega project Citadel with over 140,000 parts could just maybe get you to click those 2 buttons. That would help me out much more than I can ever explain. So thank you, but anyways, there's really not much else to talk about Field 5. I mean, it's kinda inspired by the Citadel of Champions load, which, oh wait, what's that? Holy fucking shit, I added the entirety of the Citadel of Champions load as just a casual, reimagined, over-decorated outside section as part of the Citadel, which you must complete in order to proceed further after do the entire top section of Field 5. And yeah, the entire Citadel of Champions load outside section by itself is catastrophic difficulty to complete. I mean, what the fuck do you expect? It's literally just the Citadel of Champions load redecorated and slightly nerfed. Because isn't that just so fucking silly? But anyways, instead of the break field that can be found in the middle of the Citadel of Champions load originally, before you can get to the second half of the Citadel of Champions load outside section, you also must complete the inside section of Field 6, which is this blue outline safety net to the field that is quite dumb, I can't lie, but it's nothing too crazy. I mean, hey, it's just another casual, terrifying difficulty safety net. So surely no big am I right, chat, but anyways, once you finally beat the entirety of the Citadel of Champions load reimagined along with Field 6, you then have Field 7, which is quite short in fact, but let me tell you right now, that's not a good thing, as it would already take you about an hour to get this far into the Citadel, and the reason that's not good is because this is one of the hardest unsafe floors, which means that falling anywhere here results in certain death, or we're just going back to Field 3. But hey, let's look at the positive side. This floor, despite having simplistic design, is fucking awesome because it's winter themed, yay, and I love winter. But anyways, moving on once again, once you finally get past Field 7, you'd probably think you're about to get to Field 8. But nuh-uh, because first of all, you've got this weird tunnel dropper looking section which is quite interesting, followed by an entire back section stuck to the back of Field 6 that is also entirely unsafe, which was modified by me, but mostly made by Forsaken in gameplay, followed by an old tiered obby of mine that I've also added to the Citadel, which is of course redecorated better and slightly revamped, as I decorated and revamped almost the entirety of the Citadel to look much better than most of these sections originally did. So yep, you absolutely love my life. It's not like I would already have to do over the 1.5 hours of gameplay to get to this point of the Citadel. But anyways, joke's on you, that's the least of my worries, cause right after that you've got an entirely long, tedious, punishing, nausea-inducing tiered obby section that looks scary as fuck but is all safety netted. And this entire tiered obby section alone is probably like made catastrophic difficulty to complete by itself. But we move on, because next up is the hardest fill of the entire Citadel. Or well, one of the top 3 hardest fills at least, cause I have no fucking idea how to properly rank fills of this difficulty. And now you might be asking, how the hell can a fill with basically 1% punishment possibly be that difficult after everything I've just mentioned? Because yes, Floor 8 is almost entirely safety netted. And to that I say, look at this yummy peak gameplay right here. And part of this gameplay was also my girlfriend telling me what to build, because she wanted to torture me knowing I would have to verify this. Okay, nah, but seriously, most of this field isn't that bad as of today, but rather just extremely precise in difficulty, as this entire field requires you to basically have at least one horrific difficulty completion to your name to be able to legitimately complete by itself, since it's probably horrific difficulty. So yeah, whilst I don't exactly know how to rank a field like this properly in difficulty, it might might just be horrific difficulty to beat this field by itself. And the funny part is that most of the Citadel becomes much less punishing after this field, so whoever is cracked enough at obbies to be able to stand a chance against the Citadel will probably have a winning run of over 15 hours, considering that you will most likely loop fail a lot on fields like this. Not to also mention the fact that your over 10-hour long run could just end to some stupid bullshit fail on like field 20 or something. But anyways, with all of that said, let's stop grazing just how annoyingly difficult this Citadel can become. Since to be honest, I generally really do believe that this entire mega project does currently mog basically any other previously finished consistency based long tower or Citadel or whatever obbies might be out there like Devoid. And yeah, aside from the design of the Citadel looking all shiny and gorgeous, some of the gameplay within the Citadel overall is actually really enjoyable to go through and play if you don't get stuck on it, despite how stupid it can get at times. But I do want to mention that whilst I may be self-grazing a lot, the entire point of this project was never meant to be some high quality top 1 impressive obby of all time kind of thing, as this entire Citadel was just built out of my own passion to see just how far I could push myself to build a long ass Roblox obby in terms of everything to do with building towers and citadels like this, even if it meant creating the most tedious Citadel known to mankind to ever actually be completed legitimately. Because yeah, while being the creator of Roblox's previous hardest tower ever beaten on Roblox, the Tower of Impending Doom was cool enough by itself, I did not want that to remain my peak forever, especially considering that that tower sucks absolute booty cheeks to legitimately complete. But enough yapping, since moving on, once you finally get past the medieval torture method that Field 8 is, Field 9 is just a really nice speedrun break field which you have to complete quickly enough. Although there's nothing wild going on over here, as you do get infinite chances to do this field, as it's all safety netted, including this random weird tiered obby part along with this neat little tower above the floor before you end up reaching Field 10. Oh, and my favorite part of this entire floor, I added my own museum to the start of this floor, which represents my real life mineral collecting hobby, which has some real life pictures of my best rock display specimens that I've collected from mineral shows and stuff over the years in real life. Absolutely wild PCM lore, ain't it? I'm interested into rocks, but anyways. Field 10 is definitely one of the longest but also most unique fields of the entire Citadel, as I honestly think this is by far one of the best fields within the entire Citadel in terms of quality and overall atmosphere, with me having built the entire inside of it and the outside gameplay having been built by Forsaken. And I honestly don't really know how to put into words just how this field feels, because it has a really unique feeling to it that no other field has for me, especially with its atmospheric song choice and its own aura for real. But anyways, in terms of punishment, most of this field is safety netted aside from a few little sections like this outside part, which isn't too difficult to complete with enough practice. Which is then all followed by Floor 11 being one of the shortest and most punishing fields of the entire Citadel. This entire field has some peak aura to it, especially considering that by this point the player should have spent well over 2 hours to get here in a legitimate attempt. So yeah, this field would definitely spike up your nerves quite a bit. Not to worry though, as it's an extremely short and peak looking field, which is then also followed by some random neat little innocent looking tower with some scary ass punishment to it, as if you don't save yourself on the yellow section of this neat, or if you fall into the insta-kills on the blue part, you're absolutely dead for good yet again. Although this isn't really that difficult to complete legitimately compared to previous fields like Field 8. So moving on, we've got Field 12. This was originally meant to be a classic gameplay field based on long jumps and stickouts. However, it ended up turning into one of the best fields of the entire Citadel over time, as I had continued to decorate and build more varied gameplay into it, along with this also being the longest field of the entire Citadel, which, shocker, it's definitely not like an hour long or something, but it sure as hell does go on for ages. First starting with part 1 of the inside section, which has crazy aura, tower, and is already longer than your average tower field by quite a bit. That is then followed by an entire outside section stuck to the frame, containing a lot of jank gameplay, which is then yet again followed by part 2 of the inside section that leads to the field 12 dropper. Well, unless you somehow manage to mess up this like one single unsafe jump, you should hopefully be all safe and not end up dying or anything, unless you give up on the 5 jumps of no, because of course I had to add the tortuous line of 5 extremely difficult jumps that might even take me an entire hour to land all in a row, but hey, I'm sure it's fine. I mean, surely what could go wrong? It's a safety net. Yeah, no, I'm cooked, but anyways. Once you finally get past that, you've got this entire pulsing section that has a really weird unexplainable atmosphere to it, which is also safety netted aside from the fact that there's an entire giant memory section where you have to memorize exactly what starter can collide through, because PCCM loves to go from peak gameplay that's actually good to random fucking bullshit like this. Moving on though, we've got the giant backside of field 12, which is a half safety netted section that looks fucking gorgeous, like holy shit. What's less gorgeous but rather extremely infuriating though is the next part, which is the Tower of Generation Fair Ladder Challenge, completely redecorated and completely unsafe. That comes next, which is an extremely niche reference to the Roblox Obby YouTuber Cracking the Wall, struggling a ton on the Tower of Generation Fair Ladder Challenge in his live streams back when he was grinding the Tower of Generation Fair.
What the? Oh, I almost fucking shit myself, bro.
So I added this in memory of that because hey, I just felt silly. And yeah, no, I'm definitely dying here at least 3 to 5 times at minimum. We are so fucking cooked, bro, like holy bro, like oh my days. But it's fine because next up we've got the basement floors, lasting up until floor 17, which has to be by far one of my top favorite parts of the entire Citadel. Like holy aura, this entire basement has so much fucking aura. And it also has me myself as a boss fight. And not only that, but this is where we also get to how this entire project has technically taken me years to actually finish, because for example, the entire basement of CoRANDOM used to actually be a remorseless difficulty steeple for an EToH contest that I never submitted to EToH, made way before the Citadel, which I ultra buffed and slightly revamped to be like horrific difficulty or something, since this was a perfect way to extend CoRANDOM to a much more impressive and longer extent. Because yeah, it wasn't like I was ever going to get the chance to use this EToH contest steeple for anything better than this really, and I obviously don't like to completely abandon projects that I had previously worked on, although the basement floors aren't the only parts that ended up being revamped and reused from previous projects of mine that never ended up anywhere. In fact, quite a lot of parts of the Citadel originate from older projects which I revamped or changed in order to be better for the Citadel, because there's no real reason not to do that if you think about it, since all of it was after all and still is my own work that just needed an overhaul. With that said though, I honestly cannot explain the aura of this entire basement. I mean, come on though, just imagine yourself playing this after being on a 2 or 3 hour long attempt, if not even 10 or more hours on a legitimate attempt, while you're also nervous about messing up like a dumbass because you could actually die here. But anyways, with all of that said, next up we've got field 17, which is probably the second, if not the hardest field of the entire Citadel. First, starting off with a semi-unsafe section of the floor that fits quite well with the calming beginning of the song used on this floor, that is then followed by the entire long ass outside section spread along every side of the floor that progressively gets darker in atmosphere as you progress further through this outside section, which also fits really well with the song, getting much more intense at the same time, making this one of my favorite floors in terms of overall atmosphere and quality, to be honest. Oh, and a huge portion of this floor is also based on jank gameplay like this, so that's absolutely amazing. But anyways, the name of the Citadel does after all represent random, so just like the meaning of the word random, next up we've got an extremely random longish dropper section going into floor 18, which is almost entirely safety netted. But joke's on you, floor 18 is even more random and unexpected, considering that floor 18 is like a mix of memory gameplay with jank gameplay and whatever the fuck this kind of gameplay also is. is, I honestly don't even know at this point, but what I do know is that this is absolute cinema. Also, epilepsy warning for like the next 40 seconds of the video. Oh, and of course you've also got an entirely invisible gameplay memory section before the end of the floor. So yeah, good luck learning this bullshit. But hey, here's 2 images of the gameplay being visible to help those who are insane enough to outjump or try and beat the Citadel. With that said though, next up is an entirely fan-made section of CoRANDOM made entirely by my goat Johnny was here. I mean hell, this dude even has his own original soundtracks for this long-ass tree section, but anyways. In Johnny's own words, this part called Vecnoia Drevo was from a contest hosted by PCM on the Discord server, which I decided to participate in and started this as a break from my own projects, which I'm very grateful to have won. Even though Bro was the only one in the contest, nobody else participated. But anyways, the next floor is by far one of the more interesting floors of this entire Citadel as well, as this entire brown floor is a full revamp and alter buff for floor 1 of the Citadel of Void, with many new extra sections added into it as well, along with an insane song that fits the design extremely well in my opinion. Other than that though, there's really not much else to say about this. I mean hell, it's just an endurance based floor that is almost safety netted entirely, just like the next floor also is, which is the Devil Vortex floor as I like to call it. This is floor 20, and by this point you're clearly extremely far into the Citadel. So of course you also have a catastrophic difficulty hell themed red and black floor that is low-key absolute cinema. I f with the design and theme of this floor a lot, and I absolutely loved building this floor for some reason. But anyways, after you finally get past the extremely difficult safety netted floor, it's by far not over just yet, since next up is yet another even harder and longer dark rainbow pulsing floor with yet another extremely fitting song in my opinion, considering that by this point you'd probably have spent well over 5 hours of your life on a single attempt to get this far into the Citadel. So yeah, the endless endurance text on floor 19 really does mean endless endurance with just how long the Citadel becomes. Not to worry though, it's still not over, considering next up we've got floor 22 until floor 24, which despite looking bright and colorful from the outside, are 3 extremely dark and atmospheric safety netted floors that progressively get more intense, which you have to do all in a row before you can proceed further. And doing these 3 floors in a row is probably like high catastrophic difficulty by itself, but I could just be overrating these floors difficulties at the same time since I have a massive skill issue. Either way, they're moving on, we've also got this extremely random pear-shaped tier derby purple and white section made by 1818, which you have to also complete before you get to one of the craziest parts of this entire Citadel. Oh, and it's also worth mentioning that the gameplay of floor 22 to floor 24, along with the gameplay of this outside section, were all given to me by some random person DMing me from my Discord server. So thank you for giving me more gameplay to do whatever I wanted with, just like Forsaken did. But anyways, moving on once again, epilepsy warning again just in case. Next up, you've of course also got to do this crazy long tentacle looking orange tier derby section that I made within just 2 days, which is extremely nerve wracking honestly, because falling here could result in having to redo floor 22 to floor 24, but the order of this section gets completely marked by the next floor. This entire floor was made by Jankaration, and oh my fucking god, this floor is literally the most insane shit ever. So yeah, Jankaration literally gets all the fucking grace from me for making this floor. It's fucking insane. I cannot explain the art of this floor without actually experiencing this for yourself. But anyways, once you sadly finally get past that entire floor, you then also finally get to the pre-final section, which is when the Citadel finally comes closer to an end. This is the pre-finale, which is all completely unsafe, and one single mistake here is likely to result in certain death. And despite this entire outside section being blue and yellow, the actual colors of this portal are grey and atmospheric in the actual Citadel, in order to build up for the final stretch's atmosphere, considering that you'll definitely be shaking your booty from how nervous your ass would be by this point, even though this entire outside section is like insane difficulty to complete. However, once you finally do get past that outside section, you would finally make it to the very end of this entire never-ending journey over Citadel. This is the final stretch, which despite being safety netted does have some insta-kills that you could die from if you aren't careful enough. And this entire final stretch is absolutely wild. I mean, how? Do I even have to describe this with words? Literally, just look at this. Oh, and as for the Eternal Abyss, which you may know as one of the hardest obby tower-related fan games on Roblox, I know very well some people are gonna be asking, will this Citadel be in the Eternal Abyss? And well, no, it will not, even though it could have been. But PZM, why not? Well, because you see, I want my fair share of profit from whatever Roblox creator awards the Citadel gets me, because the game is game. However, don't worry, because the Citadel place works very similarly to EToH and other obby games, as you've got legit mode, practice mode, R-jump mode, low detail mode optimization, and all that kind of stuff, along with FPS switching and whatever else had to be included. So with all of that said, the Citadel's game can be found in this video's description. But anyways, once you finally beat the final stretch, what's next? Well, there's just one final easy safety netted memory lane section with memories of the entire journey you've just been through, before you finally reach the win pad, which is lastly followed by the secret puzzle section that I will not be revealing until I beat this myself. And so with all of that said, this is the end of this multi-year long journey to finally create my best project yet, that I doubt I'll ever top the scale of. So what's next? Well, I don't know about you, but I really wanna get to 100,000 subscribers one day, no matter what it takes. So please, subscribe and like this video if you've watched this far and liked the video, and have fun.